The outlook for summer is strong, particularly international. Our consumers are prioritizing spend on premium experiences, and that's our sweet spot. We deliver some of the best experience in the sky, and consumers are wanting to travel. When we look at the second quarter coming up, we're going to have a good performance. I'm encouraged by what I see, and we're not seeing any signs of a slowdown, at least on air travel.
Delta CEO Ed Bastian there predicting strong summer travel will bolster airlines, and United is sharing Delta's optimistic outlook, predicting a profitable Q2 driven by that high demand. Joining me with his thoughts on the state of airline travel is Mike Boyd, Boyd Group International President. So, Mike, do you share this optimism for what we're seeing in terms of spring and summer travel?
Conditionally. I think summer travel, spring travel, that's in the can, if you will. That's pretty much there. What's going to happen in the third quarter? And Mr. Bastian is 100% accurate going after the premium customer, because the first part of the travel mix that's going to start to collapse with inflation, if it does, is the leisure end of it. And that doesn't, when Delta's moving into the premium cabin, they know what they're doing. So I would say we're fine. But what we don't know is what international is going to do. I think they're a little overly optimistic about that.
And as we start by focusing on the big carriers here, looking at leisure demand, which, obviously they have been relying on, still seeing a lag in business demand as well, though. How are you expecting those two areas to fare as we go into the second and third quarters?
Well, business travel is not going to come back. Look, 10 years ago, as recently as 10 years ago, you had to bring the papers from Hartford to New York to meet with the boss. Today, the boss already has that information. In other words, what we're doing right here by video is replacing a lot of business travel that used to be there. Air travel is not as efficient or as time effective as it used to be compared to other modalities. But the big issue here is leisure travel, which it seems to us on this end that the vulnerability of leisure travel is a lot less than it was before. I think leisure travel is a lot higher on the spend food chain than it was, say, 10 years ago. So I think that's going to hold out. We just don't know what inflation is going to do.
So then are we back now to the more traditional travel periods, given that we had that sort of pent-up backlog of sort of travel demand coming off of the back of COVID? Have we got to return now to the usual travel periods?
I think the usual travel spikes and valleys, but again, the mix of travelers is going to be different. Short-haul business travel is out because it's a very ineffective way of doing business. A lot of leisure travel. Take a look at these carriers like Avelo. They're doing very well, as close as we can tell. You've got Spirit, you've got Frontier. They're after a sector of the market, and when that sector starts to go, we'll know more. But right now, it's still relatively strong. So I think we're back to a situation where we have two parallel airline systems. One is the ULCCs that go after totally leisure traffic, and the second are carriers like Delta and American, United, Southwest that go after a mix of travel.
So are you expecting the same level of volatility? You mentioned some of these ULCCs. That does include a Spirit, a Frontier, Allegiant, Avelo, as you mentioned there.
Yeah, I think, again, as long as discretionary dollars hold in terms of and how people spend them, those carriers are going to be fine because they've done very well entering new markets. I mean, the ability to spike traffic to Florida is just astounding to me. Just absolutely astounding. But that means that people are willing to spend on that, even if they can't afford an egg for breakfast.
Yeah, you mentioned there an egg. Obviously, we're talking about inflation here. You mentioned Transpacific Travel as well, and that being a part of it. You say that is uncertain. What are some of the biggest risks you see in that side of the business?
Can you say China? Can you see CCP? That's the biggest risk. Again, take a look at it. When China starts to advertise how they're going to attack Taiwan, which they did last week, that kind of slows down people wanting to go see the pandas in Chengdu. So I think Northern Pacific is going to be very dead. It's not going to come back. We think China traffic, China-US will be about 100,000 this year. It used to be 8 million. That's not coming back. Other areas like Australia and New Zealand, like United's betting on, that'll be fine. But North Pacific travel is not going to do well in the next couple of years.
I'll certainly be tracking that. We do appreciate you joining us this morning. Mike Boyd there, Boyd Group International President, for joining me this morning. All right, coming up, consumers are feeling the inflation